So what we're going to do now is take a look at some of the smart sheets that are specifically designed for teaching vocabulary, and we're going to look at some applications of how science teachers have used those. And so back to the homepage of the Make Sense Strategies, what we're going to be looking at is a whole series of tools that can be found here. And you notice there are different types of vocabulary smart sheets like word castles and semantic tables, word comparisons and connections, and so forth. And so what we're going to do is we're not going to look at all of these because there's an awful lot of them. We're just going to look at samples of different types so you can get a sense of how they might be used when you're teaching science. So to start with, let's take a look at word castles. And so if you click on word castles here, that will take you to this page, and we're going to take a look at what are called word walls to begin with. Now, basically with word walls, you have a term, the definition of the term, either draw a picture or import a picture, and then note what's a knowledge connection, what's this term make you think of. Now, what's really important to remember about defining terms, and especially in science, and this is sometimes pretty challenging, but you don't want to define new terms using other terms in the definition that also need defining. In other words, all the words in the definition need to be familiar words. And very often, because science is so complex, we often define terms using other terms that also need defining. And that dog just don't hunt too well when it comes to helping kids really get the definitions. So let me illustrate how this works. And so let's say one of the terms is an equator. This is the gist of what the definition of the equator is. This is actually a picture that the student imported to put there. And then what's a knowledge connection? What's it make you think of? Or what's something that you know about that you can connect it to? Now, this is an example of word castles. Now, word castles are set up so that you have a new word, the definition of it, and that's the gist. And by the way, what we don't typically do is just copy definitions, because students often can copy it and not think about it. We have them paraphrase the definition to kind of get it in their own words. So new word, definition, what's a knowledge connection? Either draw or import a picture. And what would be a synonym? What's something that means the same? An acronym, which is basically what's the opposite? And then if there is one, a homonym. And then write a sentence using the term. So what we're doing is we're using these in lieu of the traditional kind of look up the word and write the definition and then write a sentence using the term, because what we're having them do is think about the meaning of that term in lots of different ways and context and so forth. So here's an example of how that looks with science. And so for an example, you have biotic factor, which is the definition of all living things in the environment. Knowledge connections, well, they're animals, plants, germs, bacteria, etc. A synonym basically means it's alive. And an antonym means basically it was dead or never alive. In other words, the opposite. Homonym, a biotic woman. And a sentence, my pesky little sister is a biotic factor. Kind of cute there. So you can get a sense of how these work. In this case, the student drew pictures as opposed to importing them. In terms of semantic tables, I want to share a few examples of that. We're going to take a look at this one. And so this is set up so that you have your term is a member of this group or a type or a part of this bigger thing. So it's check one or the other. And then key things to remember about that term, and then why it's important. Either draw or import a picture, and then is like. In other words, what would be a metaphor or simile for that term? And so, for example, photosynthesis, it's a type or a part of ways living things get and process food. Key things to remember about this topic. Why is it important? In this case, the student imported some pictures that sort of captured the essence. And then it's like making a cupcake, because you get the mix from the store and you store in water and you add heat energy, as in baking in a stove, and then you add icing, equals sugary human food. Well, basically, when the process of photosynthesis is a similar process in some way. Obviously, it's solar energy rather than heat and so forth. But it does result in sugary plant food. Now here's another version of this. It's very similar. What's different here is you have what would be an example of it and what would be a non-example, or don't confuse it with. And then also this one has a place for knowledge connections. This one is using these semantic tables for comparison. And so here, obviously, we're comparing carbon dioxide with oxygen, and features, examples and non-examples of each, and is like, and knowledge connections. Word comparisons, there are a variety of ones that you can use. We'll look at a couple of them. One is just your basic Venn. Now this one has places for multiple comparisons of different words. And so an example might be comparing sleet with hail, condensation with evaporation, drought with precipitation, and so forth. This is called word synectics. And so what we're doing is we're taking a couple of terms and how this word is like this word because they both involve, versus this word is not like this word because this one involves this, whereas this other one involves something different. And here's an example of that. Chloroplast is like chlorophyll because they both, and they're not like, chloroplast is not like chlorophyll because of these reasons. Word connections are various smart visuals that are designed to have the student take the term and do various things to relate it to background knowledge in various ways. And so an example of that is the personal connections. And so what you have here are all the terms are related to this topic, various new terms, and then places for the definition. Remember, these need to be in student-friendly language. And then for each of these, what the student notes are what's a personal connection or what's it make you think of. So here's an example of one of those, like brittle is something that's hard but easily broken. Personal connection, well, peanut brittle is hard but can easily break it into pieces, so it's brittle. Clarity is the state of being clear, easy to see through. Ocean has great clarity when you see straight down to your feet. I guess presumably when you're standing in the ocean, and so forth. But anyway, you get a sense of what we're doing. We're not just looking up the word and writing a definition, we're also making personal connections with it.